Hello, welcome back to another live. We haven't been on for, I think the last one I did was Kev, which seems like forever ago, just before Christmas. But we are back and we're going to be running these weekly as usual. Today we've got a very special guest. She is no stranger to you Ultra X lot. She is the fantastic Renee McGregor. So very, very excited to have her on and to answer some of the questions. We've had loads of questions come in, as we usually do with Renee. So she's coming on now. Yes, Max, I am cold because I had to open the windows in my house and I was training this morning and the room just hasn't quite warmed up. But yes, hello! So, I'm good. First things first, today is not just any Thursday, is it?
No.
What day is today?
Today is my birthday.
Yay! Happy birthday! I'm not going to sing because that would be painful for everyone involved. I've already sang, actually.
You've sung to me already. It's fine. It's all good. It's all good.
Oh, I've got spinach on my jumper. That's nice. It's a rare occasion when I eat spinach, so it's a good thing everyone captured that.
Very good. Very good.
Kieran is clapping because he knows just about how terrible my, if it's not pasta, it's bagels diet is. But that's
problem with that. Pasta and bagels works for me too, to be fair.
I just had a bagel. I just happened to have some spinach in it.
Yeah. All good.
So we're going to be talking a bit about that today. I'm sure there's a lot for me to learn, as I'm sure there is. We've had lots of questions come in, as we usually do with you. Now, usually we take a little bit of time to introduce the person, but everyone here knows who you are because you're an integral part of our team. So we're going to jump straight into the questions. Some of them, as usual, are a little bit repetitive. So if there's one that is worded slightly different and I haven't recognised it as a repetitive question, do let me know and we can just touch back on the answer that we gave previously. So we'll start things off. I think quite a few of these have come from your page as well because some of them are kind of HA menopause specific, but we'll power through. Any advice on balancing the role of carbohydrates in training versus the effect on menopause?
Oh, good question. So I guess like the menopause is quite a complex time in that obviously so much is changing, in that obviously estrogen levels are dropping, which can have a significant impact on your performance. So something some people find in menopause is that actually they start to struggle with their performance. They get very tired, their sleep is often problematic, and that's why often then recovery is poor and so on and so on. So it's quite a complex picture. There's also quite a lot of information out there about your body composition changing, and so this is when people tend to avoid carbohydrates because they worry about their weights and all their changes. I guess the first thing I would say is always try and work with a physician on this, like making sure that you are getting the right support in terms of menopause. While I can only give you my personal opinion on this, and it's based on the experience of working with others, not on myself at the moment. I'm not that old just yet. Getting there, but not there yet. But what I would say, one thing I would say is there's a lot of misinformation about like the use of hormone replacement therapy, and a lot of women get quite nervous and scared about using it. But from a performance point of view, it's probably your best friend. And so I think like one thing to remember is that the reason why we often get these symptoms around menopause is because of the decreasing levels of estrogen. It's also very similar to what we see in REDS and low energy availability, as well as these low levels of estrogen that cause all the problems with bone health and, you know, poor performance and body composition and everything else. So my advice would be if you are somebody who has been, you know, you've been told by your GP or physician that you are going through the menopause and you do love to train, then you don't really need to change your diet too significantly, especially if you are training and you're doing your strength work as well, which is really, really important, probably more important in this age group than you can imagine. Some strength work alongside your endurance training is going to be really critical, and then fueling appropriately around those different types of training sessions and getting the hormone back in is going to be the important thing. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying don't worry about it too much, but just make sure you've got the right medical support in place, because I think too many women try and carry on doing training without taking HRT because they've heard too much negativity about HRT. But actually it's really important if you want to carry on performing at quite a high level, or even just like an intense level or a volume level, if that makes sense.
Great. Amazing. We've actually had sort of another one quite similar to that, basically the training effects the effect training can have on menopause. So if you are listening and you sent in that question, then hopefully there's a few answers in there for you. I'm going to go to a few sort of more generic ones now. There are a few on HA, which I think is worth touching. Perhaps you can explain what that is as well. But we'll go for some more generic ones first, just to make sure that we're tackling the wider audience. So let's go for this one. Nutrition for injured runners, and does it vary by type of injury, e.g. bone versus muscle versus tendon?
The answer is yes, it does. But I guess it's kind of, again, it's kind of, people sort of get injured and then panic. And it's almost like you need to, not you at all. No, haven't had any messages at all from you. None at all. But I think the thing is and actually you're a really good example, because what we did with you is that we looked at everything, right? We looked at the build-up picture of what was going on for you at that time. So we looked at your lifestyle, we looked at, you know, workload, your training load, all those different things. We looked at everything, and we did eliminate things. Like, I wasn't really worried about your diet, I'll be honest, because I know you and I've lived with you and I know what you're like. But I did want to rule it out, because you never know, type thing. And I wasn't too worried about your hormones either, because again, we've kind of kept an eye on that for several months, almost every year now. So I think, like, from an injury point of view, it's always worth kind of looking back and going, could I see this coming? You know, like, were the signs there? Were there niggles? Was my recovery poor? Was I going, like, for me, I know that my injuries always come when I under recover. And what I talk about under recovery, I mean literally don't get enough sleep, probably don't take enough time off work, and I'm trying to cram in everything, and it's too much. And I've learned from that it's better to, and you know, Damien and I have lots of conversations about this, and I'll say to him, do you know what, I'd rather not do that extra run. I'd rather not do that extra run than know that potentially is going to lead me to an injury, because I'm just trying to cram too much in, basically. So I think, like, it's really important to think about where the injury is coming from. So if it's a bone injury, then again, it depends on where it is and kind of how long you're going to be off for, and all those different things. And some of the things you can do is you need to look at, obviously, energy availability, because making sure that's not, sorry guys, I'm going to be 2 seconds. The door is banging and it won't go because they know I'm here. I'll be 2 seconds.
We'll be back in a second. I'm not even going to try and answer these questions, because as we've already established, my diet mainly consists of pasta and bagels with a variety of sauces, few vegetables that I like thrown in there, occasionally an apple, and then quite a lot of cake. But Renee will be able to cook you out of any of those bad habits and cook better.
Lots of flowers.
Ah, lovely.
So anyway, I'll look at those in a minute. Sorry about that, everybody. So going back to injury time. So obviously, bone injury, we have to work out where it's coming from. Like, is it an energy availability thing? Is that why it's led up to that? And if so, then obviously reducing your intake at that point is the worst thing you can possibly do, which is what a lot of people do. If it's tendon, there is some evidence that you can do some, you can take some collagen, you can have a collagen protocol that I do use with some. It's the doorbell again.
It's what happens on your birthday.
2 seconds. Go. Keeping fit up and down the stairs.
That's the problem with having a topsy-turvy house, you see. You've got to run to the top to answer the door. But it's Renee's birthday, so the gifts have got to keep coming in. It could even be the one from Emily and I, fingers crossed. And if it is, then that's obviously allowed. But yeah, as Renee is saying, we're going to have different injuries. In case you just joined. Yay! Different injuries, how you should tailor nutrition around those. Back to you.
Yes, so there is some evidence that we can use collagen and collagen protocols, particularly with tendon injuries, but you have to capture it at the right time. So again, I mean, you and I, you know, I work with quite a lot of physios, and so I would generally tend to discuss that with them and see what they think, and then add that protocol into place. When it comes to muscle, to be honest, there's very little you can do nutritionally for a muscle injury. It's a case of probably doing what your physio tells you to do and working on that. So yeah, I mean, nutrition is important for injury, but each one is so different. Like there is some evidence that you could change your diet a little bit to reduce inflammation, but a lot of the evidence out there is not very concrete. The key things are energy availability, making sure you're not cutting back too much, because that's the biggest mistake people make, is that they get injured, they worry about the fact that they're not moving as much, and they'll pull back too much. And actually, if you don't give your body enough energy, protein, carbohydrate, it's not going to be able to heal. And that's the big thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, more from like a personal thing, but something that's cropped up a little bit since I've been injured is people talking about whether I've reduced my calories, because I'm obviously not moving as much, you know, out of lockdown, and I'm moving a lot less than I usually would. But I can honestly say I haven't, because I have no idea how much I eat each day. I just eat when I'm hungry, and nothing bad happens. You know, I have not doubled in size. You know, I've not, I don't know, like got really spotty or anything like that. Like nothing bad has happened. It's not, you know, it hasn't been a super long period of time, and I think people are just so cautious of the repercussions without thinking of actually the repercussions of doing that on top of the injury.
And I think the thing to remember is that, you know, like generally speaking, this is a thing that people forget. Exercise actually stimulates your appetite. This is one of the reasons why exercise alone doesn't necessarily change body size and body weight, because exercise stimulates appetite. Like there's a really good study that was done in the beginning of last year, which looked at actually looked at university students, but it looked at 3 different groups: those walking 10,000 steps a day, those walking 15,000 steps a day, those walking 20,000 steps a day. And it kind of looked at terms of like your energy output, your energy input, and your overall weight. And none of their weights changed, because fundamentally what happens is the more physical activity you do, generally speaking, your appetite increases. So what I notice is if I have a period of time where I don't train as hard, or I don't train because I'm injured, or I'm tired, or work gets in the way, or whatever, naturally, without really thinking about it, probably I'll eat the same types of food, but I might not eat as much. You know, like, because I'm just not, whereas, you know, like when you're running lots and doing lots, I mean, you eat tiffin for breakfast because your body's kind of going, I'm desperately in need of energy. And I'm not saying you don't eat tiffin now, but you probably don't eat it for breakfast with your breakfast, right? It's kind of, you probably just don't need it as much. So I think it's really important to, I think that's a really important thing to remember, that exercise does stimulate appetite. And so if you get injured, yes, it might take a week or so for your body to readjust because it's been used to eating a little bit more because you were training hard, but it will adjust. And keeping the composition of the diet is really critical to help you recover.
Sure. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure that was very helpful for a lot of people. Okay. I'm going to generalize this question a little bit more, but they've said nutrition and recovery tips on increasing distance, half marathon to ultra multi-stage. So I guess to generalize it a little bit more, how should people change their nutrition if they're training for something, say their first ultra? You know, they're building up distance quite a lot. They're going to be running over a number of days, be it 2, be it 5 for Ultra X events. How should their nutrition change? How should they look at taking on extra food? Like, do you have any strategies for that? Because I know for some people it can actually be quite overwhelming to go from having, let's say, 3 meals to 5 meals, or from having 4 snacks to, I mean, I don't know who counts their snacks, but if you do count your snacks, then, like, you know, increasing those. So is there anything you'd recommend to help people do that?
I think the first thing, again, as I said just now, remember that your appetite probably will go up. Now, one thing that you do, what a lot of people find, and I think somebody did ask this question, is that if you're doing a lot of intense training, so a lot of hard training. Now, what I mean by hard is it could be a long run, because that is still hard on the body. Even if you're running slowly, it's hard on the body. Or if you're doing like a session of some description, your appetite initially may fall. So I always notice on my session days, like yesterday, because I've worked quite hard, I don't feel as hungry But come today, I can't stop eating because there's a bit of a lag. And so one thing you probably will notice again is that your appetite naturally will start to change, and you should start to notice that you are eating a little bit more because that's what your body is asking you for. But I think if you're somebody that maybe you're a bit too mindful about it, maybe you're unsure, then I would actually start to think, if you're going from like something like half marathon over to more ultra distance, then you probably are going to need to think about adding snacks, particularly if you've gone from 3 meals. You probably are, that's not going to be enough to support the training you're going to do. And definitely, as you've pointed out, one key thing is, especially in ultra distance, is familiarizing your body with food while you're running itself. So making sure that you are training and training your gut particularly to take on food. Now, if you know in advance that you're going to be doing an ultra event, and you've got 4 or 5 months, you've got plenty of time that, every Sunday or whenever you do your long run, that's the time to be just trying out new things and different things. And although we tend to use, this kind of formula of 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour, the thing to remember is that it is more about finding stuff that works for you. So, you don't have to use gels, you don't have to use drinks, you can use real food. Like, I know that you and I both use bagels quite often, so you cut bagels up, and I have like Marmite bagels, and that's perfect for me. And I'll use sports drinks because I find drinking a lot easier than I do eating. Now, that's something that's taken me years to work out, but it's what works for me. So I don't always carry as much food because I know that I'm going to get my carbohydrate intake through my drinks, and it's just making sure that I can get those at checkpoints and things. So it's kind of it's starting to try and use lots of different things, and working out what works for you. The other thing I'd say about that is practicing running at the intensity you're going to run at and eating at the same time, because again, one mistake people make is that they sort of run a bit easier, and then they think, oh yeah, my stomach can cope with this, but then in a race they go really hard, and then they associate the running hard and they associate the kind of stomach upsets with the food, when actually it's probably the case they haven't trained their gut to run at that intensity. That makes sense. So I think like the thing is that probably your body is going to tell you itself when it needs more food. But my advice is if you sort of know that you're increasing your training, then it's all important to increase your nutrition alongside that as well.
Definitely. And I imagine there's a lot of people who have sort of signed up to a bigger event this year following getting a bit more into running or whatever over lockdown. So super, super useful. Okay, next one I'm going to go for is any good food / supplements for healthier joints?
So, I mean, the jury is out a little bit on this one. As I've got older, I do take collagen now prophylactically. So initially I only used to take it if I got injured, but now I actually take it all the time, because as we get older, obviously our joints become stiffer and we lose elasticity. So we lose that collagen in our bodies. And so I have found that is something that I work well with, but I don't take anything else. That said, there is some good evidence that things like EPA, so what you find in omega-3 fatty oils and things like that, can be really, really helpful. So, your omega-3s could be a useful thing to take, and that can help with inflammation. But again, if you're eating oily fish, if you're getting like a good variety of essential fatty acids through your diet, then actually that should be sufficient. Some people swear by glucosamine and turmeric and things like that, but to be honest, at the moment there's not enough significant evidence to kind of use it as a kind of performance aid or a performance enhancement, or even as a kind of protectionary aspect. That said, if you're taking it and it's working for you, keep taking it.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Just to jump back, someone has asked for some advice around fueling a hilly 60 miler. I think we covered a little bit of that when we were just talking about increasing appetite. Someone has also asked about nerves. Perhaps we'll cover this in another Instagram live. I'm not sure it's directly associated now that your stomach, but perhaps drop us a DM on that one, and I'll try and share some pearls of wisdom to calm the nerves. But I'm keen to stick to stuff that that you kind of specialize in here. Now, someone has said, are there any supplements that you would recommend taking regularly? Now, I know you just kind of touched a little bit on that, but I think it's one worth, like, I know it's different. Told me to take sort of various things. But I know it's a different person. Also, no need to say sorry. I just thought it was easier to ask.
It's Bailey coming down the stairs. It's carnage here. Carnage in my house. So in terms of supplements, the one that I would recommend usually is vitamin D, because obviously, especially this time of year when we're in the winter months, we don't get enough of the right sunlight to absorb our vitamin D. And vitamin D is really important for immune health, but also really important for your recovery. So we know it's valuable in muscular recovery. That said, I've had quite a few people recently who, when I've looked at their blood test results, their vitamin D levels have been really, really good. So it's a tricky one, because it's not one, like, ideally I would make sure that everybody was tested so we know what their level was, and then you could titrate the amount of vitamin D everybody needs. But obviously it's not a cheap, like, it's not one that GPs like to do routinely, because it costs them quite a lot of money. So I would say vitamin D probably is the main nutrient I'd be recommending. In some cases, obviously, if you are low in iron, then obviously you should be taking that. In terms of some of the ergogenic aids like beetroot, cherry active, I know that they're some of the things that people always want to know a little bit more about. Beetroot, from an endurance point of view, like from a long distance point of view, there's very little science to support that it's of any benefit in that longer distance. It's very good for short distance and repeated sprints. So if you're like doing football or rugby or something, it's very good for that, but it doesn't seem to have the same effect on a long endurance event. Cherry active is something that I do promote a lot with the kind of, I suppose, the very high performing athletes I work with, particularly when they're going into a major competition. We would use it because there is quite a lot of evidence that suggests. So for example, this is a really good one for if you think about doing Scotland or England or Jordan or any of those things where you're doing 2 days. Somebody said they can't stand beetroot. It's great. So the 2-day events particularly is that what we know is that if you take cherry active in the 5 days leading up to that event, and then over those 2 events, those 2 days, what can happen is your recovery can be enhanced and you get less oxidative stress. So it can be very, very useful for the types of events that we do at Ultra X, because it can mean the difference between you maybe starting the next day or not, to a certain degree. And so I would definitely recommend, sorry all of you guys that wanted this advice for Ultra X England, it's only just come to me that it would have been useful to say that. But yeah, cherry active can be very useful in that sort of 5 days into an event, over the event, and then 2 days afterwards. We've noticed that people tend to have better recovery. Cherry active is also really good for any of you athletes out there that do a lot of travel and have to get used to time zones and different time zones. It can be very, very good at helping you recalibrate your sleep, because it's been involved in it's been shown to have it helps with production of melatonin, so it can help you sleep as well. So it can be very useful for jet lag as well.
Amazing. Well, a few nuggets, golden nuggets for you guys there. Okay, final one. What should I choose? Okay, I know this one comes up quite a lot. And I know you've covered it before, but it does seem to be one that repeatedly asked. High fat, low carb diet for endurance. Either going to be training, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so high carb, low fat diets. No, high fat. Yeah, look, go back to. I've got to work out what is these senile moments going on. Now I'm not a massive fan of low carb, high fat diets, because fundamentally, although there is some suggestion that you get better at using fat for fuel and it's more useful from a endurance point of view, and you know that's kind of the theory behind it. The problem is that's just looking at one element. It's not looking as you as an individual and your holistic approach to being a healthy and sustainable athlete. And so what we do know is that carbohydrate availability is really, really important in terms of regulating your hormones particularly. And obviously if you don't have healthy hormones, then that has an effect on so many things. So when I talk about healthy hormones, I'm talking about all your hormones. I know we focus generally on things like estrogen and testosterone, but we're actually talking about your hunger hormones. We're talking about your growth hormone, which is so important for athletes in terms of adaptation from training. So what a lot of people don't realize is that and I'm trying to simplify it because it's so complex, but basically our hypothalamus is really sensitive to carbohydrate availability. So when this is low, it will start to decrease our production of thyroid hormone, particularly T3. And if this is low, this then means that all the other hormones in the body tend to downregulate. And so you don't even produce growth hormone. So you're not going to get those adaptations. Now, one thing I will say is that then people will always go, yeah, but it worked for me. And the thing is, everybody is different. There is no one set rule for everybody. And I think it's really important to say that. However, fundamentally, a low carb, high fat diet is most likely not suited to any women, because women seem to be very, very sensitive to the low carb element. But also, we do know that low carbohydrate intake does tend to affect your immune system as well. So although it might not be an immediate effect, you may find that 12 months, 18 months down the line, when you start to see the negative impact of this type of approach to your overall health. And finally, I think it's really important to realize that while you may feel like you're performing better, your actual efficiency is much lower. So you don't actually perform as well as you could do. So there's lots of stuff there, and it's probably one for a whole session, but it's just kind of give you a quick idea. It's not something that I would recommend because I've seen the real negative impacts it has, particularly on things like bone health, immune health, hormonal health, and even your cognitive function to a certain degree.
Okay, amazing. Well, yeah, definitely one that pops up. So if you're just joining and you are one of those guys wondering about high fat, low carb, I can't get it out now, then definitely watch back this video. But really, thank you so much for giving up your time, especially on your birthday. It's an absolute honor to have you on. Lovely to chat, and I'm sure we will speak to you very, very soon.
Yes, take care everybody, and thank you, and I'll see you all very soon.
Bye.
Bye.